being that time where you had a line on a kind of music that was so exciting.
Before his sudden death in 2003, Robert Palmer, known for his sharp suits, smooth voice, and unshakable stage presence, shared truths that few ever heard. But in his final years, that carefully held image began to crack. Subtle comments, private admissions, and quiet warnings hinted at a hidden struggle he never revealed to the public. What did Robert Palmer finally confess? And why did he guard it for so long? Join us as we uncover the final truth he carried to the end. Born for trouble. Robert Palmer's story begins in the industrial town of Batley, Yorkshire, where he was born on January 19, 1949. His early life was shaped by a mix of strict order and quiet creativity. His father, an officer in the Royal Navy, brought with him a sense of discipline, routine, and respect for hard work. He expected the same from his children, and this influence stayed with Robert throughout his life. His mother, on the other hand, had artistic leanings. She loved design and music, and her softer, creative side balanced the household. Growing up between his father's structured world and his mother's love for the arts helped Palmer form a personality that blended confidence with sensitivity. He learned early on that both discipline and imagination could coexist, and that combination would later define his music and his public image. Because of his father's naval career, the Palmer family didn't stay in one place for long. When Robert was still a boy, the family moved to Malta, an island in the Mediterranean Sea. The move opened his eyes to a completely new world. Living among people who valued music as part of daily life left a mark on him that would later come through in his songwriting and performances. During his time in Malta, Robert also began listening to Armed Forces Radio, which played American music for British service members stationed abroad. This station introduced him to genres that were still fresh and exciting in the early 1960s: jazz, soul, and blues. Artists like Nat King Cole, Marvin Gaye, and Otis Redding became his heroes. Their voices carried warmth and honesty, and their songs told stories that felt real. As a teenager, Palmer explored his artistic side in other ways too. He loved to draw and paint, often sketching people or scenes from memory. He had a strong eye for detail, something that later influenced his visual presentation as a performer. Around this same time, he began to write short bits of poetry and experiment with song lyrics. His early attempts were simple, but they gave him a way to express himself. He started to imagine what it might be like to perform his own songs one day. He was quiet by nature, but when it came to art and music, he found his voice. These early creative habits gave him the confidence to start building a personal style, something polished, thoughtful, and slightly mysterious. Palmer's first real step into performance came while he was a student at Scarborough High School. Like many teenagers in the 1960s, he was caught up in the excitement of rock and roll and the growing music scene in Britain. He joined a local band, performing covers of popular American and British songs at school events and small clubs around town. It didn't take long for people to notice him. Even at that young age, his voice was distinctive, smooth, clear, and full of control. While other singers shouted their way through songs, Palmer sang with precision. He cared about every note and every phrase. He also paid attention to how he looked on stage, dressing neatly and carrying himself with quiet confidence. His bandmates and local audiences admired how professional he seemed for someone so young. Those early performances were important training. They taught him how to command attention without being loud or flashy. He learned to let his voice and presence speak for themselves. He also discovered how much he enjoyed connecting with an audience. The cheers and applause gave him a sense of purpose that he hadn't felt before. Playing in those small clubs built the foundation for his lifelong pursuit of musical excellence. He wasn't content to blend in. He wanted to stand out through skill and style. By the time Palmer left school, he had developed both the confidence and the curiosity that would carry him into his future career. His background, a disciplined father, an artistic mother, a childhood spent between England and Malta, and an early love of American soul had all prepared him for the unique path ahead. Each influence had shaped a part of who he was. Disciplined yet creative, traditional yet adventurous, and grounded yet ambitious. These qualities would soon come together as he stepped into the professional music world, ready to find his own sound and his own audience. Fame's double edge. Robert Palmer's journey from a local Yorkshire talent to an international music icon truly began in the late 1960s. By this time, he had already built a reputation for having a smooth, confident voice and a deep love for American soul and R&B. His first real professional opportunity came when he joined the Alan Bone, a respected British band that mixed rock, pop, and psychedelia. The group was already established, fronted by singer Jess Roden, but when Roden left, Palmer was chosen to replace him. It was a big moment. Suddenly, he was moving from small-town stages to the heart of London's evolving music scene. Joining the Alan Bone marked Palmer's first step into the professional world of recording and touring. The band was part of the late 60s British psychedelic wave, colorful, experimental, and full of creative risk. For Robert, it was an entirely new environment. He was now surrounded by skilled musicians and producers who worked under serious time pressures. He quickly had to adapt to the realities of studio life, where every note was analyzed and every performance had to meet label expectations. It was here that Palmer learned how demanding the music industry could be. His first recordings with the band gave him an introduction to the business side of music, contracts, management, and label interference. Though the group never became massive chart stars, they had a strong following, and Palmer's polished vocals drew positive attention. Reviewers and insiders began to notice the new young singer with the striking voice and clean-cut presence. London in the late 1960s was a busy, sometimes chaotic scene filled with new sounds and opportunities. Palmer soaked it all in. The experience gave him confidence, technical skill, and a taste of fame, just enough to push him towards something bigger. After leaving the Alan Bone, Palmer was ready to take more creative control. In the early 1970s, he co-founded Vinegar Joe with another powerful singer, Elkie Brooks. The two of them created a dynamic onstage partnership that mixed raw energy with theatrical performance. Their shows were loud, physical, and full of charisma. Palmer, who had once been shy, became increasingly bold on stage. Dressed in sharp suits or flamboyant outfits, he moved with style and confidence. These were the early signs of the sophisticated performer he would later become known for. Vinegar Joe was part of the British blues rock movement, and their music was often rough-edged and intense. Palmer's soulful voice cut through the chaos, giving their songs a touch of class and rhythm. Yet, behind the scenes, things were less glamorous. The band struggled with financial pressure, constant touring, and personality clashes. Palmer began to feel frustrated. He wanted more precision in his music, tighter arrangements, cleaner sound, and less drama. The band's wild, free-form attitude didn't match his growing desire for refinement and control. By 1974, Vinegar Joe disbanded. And while the group didn't reach major commercial success, the experience gave Palmer something more valuable: stage confidence and self-awareness. He had learned what kind of artist he didn't want to be. He no longer wanted to rely on chaos or image. He wanted to focus on his craft, his voice, and his individuality. That mindset led directly to the next phase of his life, the start of his solo career. When Palmer signed with Island Records, it was a turning point. The label's founder, Chris Blackwell, had an eye for talent and understood how to develop artists with unique styles. Blackwell believed in Palmer's potential and gave him the freedom to experiment. In 1974, Palmer recorded his debut solo album, Sneakin' Sally Through the Alley, in New Orleans. It was a bold move for a British artist to work in America, but Palmer wanted authenticity. He collaborated with American musicians from the band Little Feat and members of the Meters. who were well known for their funky, soulful sound. The result was an album that blended funk, rock, and soul in a way that felt fresh and natural. Palmer's voice fit perfectly over the grooves and rhythms of New Orleans. Though Sneakin' Sally Through the Alley wasn't an immediate hit in Britain, it built a loyal following in the United States. American audiences loved the mix of sophistication and rhythm, and critics praised Palmer's ability to merge British rock sensibilities with Southern soul. He followed it with more albums that explored different styles, from reggae to electronic pop. Each record showed that he was never afraid to experiment or cross musical boundaries. By the mid-1980s, Robert Palmer had established himself as a respected, versatile musician. But his biggest success was still ahead. In 1985, he released Riptide, the album that would take him to global fame. The hit single Addicted to Love became an instant classic, catchy, sleek, and unforgettable. Its music video, featuring Palmer in a suit surrounded by expressionless models playing instruments, became one of MTV's defining visuals of the decade. His image, a sharp-dressed man with perfect posture and a cool, confident stare, made him stand out in an era of flash and excess. Addicted to Love and later hits like Simply Irresistible made Palmer a household name. He won Grammy Awards, sold millions of records, and performed on stages around the world. Yet, with fame came criticism. Some reviewers claimed he focused more on image than substance, calling him too polished or distant. But Palmer knew exactly what he was doing. The elegance and control that some saw as coldness were, to him, part of the art. He was deliberate in how he looked, sounded, and presented himself. He didn't just want to make good songs. He wanted to make complete experiences. Despite the critics, his talent was undeniable. His voice remained strong, adaptable, and expressive. He could sing soul as convincingly as rock or pop. Behind his calm exterior was a man who worked tirelessly to perfect his music and protect his artistic identity. The 1980s made Robert Palmer not just successful, but iconic, a figure of refinement in a world of noise. He had finally reached the top, but success brought new challenges that would test his discipline and his health in the years ahead. Love behind doors. Robert Palmer's life off stage was often as interesting as his time in the spotlight, though he rarely spoke much about it. Behind his polished public image and busy career was a man who valued privacy and stability, especially in his early years. His relationship with Sue Palmer, his wife and the mother of his children, was central to that sense of grounding. Their marriage began before he became an international star, and it followed him through the highs and lows of fame. But as his success grew, so did the pressures that came with it. His personal life would become a mix of calm domesticity and the strain of being constantly in motion. Robert met Sue in the early 1970s, a time when his music career was still taking shape. She was warm, intelligent, and calm, qualities that balanced his growing ambition and restlessness. Their relationship developed quietly, without the drama often seen in show business romances. When they married, they settled in Malta, a place Robert had loved since childhood. It was peaceful and private, far removed from the constant noise of the music industry. Their home became a kind of retreat, filled with sunlight, art, and the sounds of his early songwriting. Sue was not only his partner, but also his emotional anchor. During the long years of touring, recording, and media appearances, she was the steady presence he could return to. Friends often described her as the one person who truly understood him. When Robert was caught up in the hectic pace of the music world, Sue kept things grounded at home. She managed the household and looked after their children while he worked abroad. Despite the glamour that surrounded him, Palmer was known to be a family man at heart during these years. He tried to protect his wife and children from public attention, rarely allowing them to be photographed or discussed in interviews. Their life together in Malta reflected Palmer's appreciation for order and comfort. He enjoyed good food, quiet evenings, and the company of close friends. Having a family gave him a sense of purpose that balanced out the unpredictability of fame. When he wasn't performing, he was said to be a gentle, attentive father who cherished the simple routines of home life. The family later moved between homes in the Bahamas and Switzerland, but that same pattern remained. Robert chasing his career, and Sue keeping the family together behind the scenes. Still, being married to a famous musician was not easy. Palmer's schedule was relentless, and he was often away for months. Though Sue was patient and devoted, the constant separation eventually began to show its effects. The world saw a stylish, confident man, but behind the scenes, his family life sometimes struggled under the weight of his success. As Palmer's fame grew in the 1980s, his personal world expanded far beyond the simple domestic life he once had. He became part of high society, invited to parties, private gatherings, and elite events around Europe and the Caribbean. He owned luxurious homes in places like the Bahamas and Lugano, Switzerland, where he was known for his refined taste and quiet charm. His lifestyle was comfortable and elegant. Palm trees, private cars, and quiet luxury far removed from the rowdy image of most rock stars. Robert's appearance became part of his identity. The tailored suits, the neat hair, the calm expression, none of it was accidental. He enjoyed fashion and understood how much presentation mattered. He mixed easily with designers, photographers, and aristocrats who admired his sophistication. He was friends with models and musicians, yet he never behaved like someone desperate for attention. Instead, he carried himself with the air of a gentleman who had stepped into the rock world without losing his manners. The Bahamas years showed his love for beauty and privacy. He would spend his time writing songs, relaxing by the sea, or hosting small dinner parties with close friends. In Switzerland, he lived a quieter life surrounded by nature and art. To many, Palmer seemed to have it all: talent, wealth, family, and elegance. But his need for privacy sometimes made him appear distant, even cold to people who didn't know him personally. He enjoyed people's company, but was careful about who he truly let in. This carefully maintained balance between fame and seclusion helped build the image of Robert Palmer as a gentleman rocker. He was never wild or careless in public. Instead, he was the man in the suit with a glass of wine in hand, always polite, always composed. Yet beneath that composure, there were growing cracks in his personal life. The Royal Whisper. In the 1980s, Robert Palmer's public image was one of charm, polish, and quiet confidence. He was known for his smooth voice, sharp suits, and unshakable composure. During this time, whispers began to circulate about an alleged connection between Robert Palmer and Princess Diana. The rumor quickly grew into one of the most talked about, though least proven, stories of his career. The rumors first appeared in the mid to late 1980s, when both Palmer and Princess Diana were at the height of their public fame. Palmer had become a global music star, known for his sophistication and style, while Diana had become the most photographed woman in the world. She was admired for her grace and beauty, but she was also known for her struggles within the royal family and her interest in popular culture. Unlike traditional royals, Diana loved modern music. She often spoke about her favorite artists, and she was known to attend concerts and charity events that involved famous singers. According to gossip magazines of the time, Diana was said to have admired Palmer's music, particularly his hit songs like Addicted to Love and simply Irresistible. She was drawn to performers who carried a sense of confidence and sensitivity, qualities Palmer had in abundance. The idea that the glamorous princess and the gentlemanly rock star might have shared a personal connection was irresistible to the press. It was the perfect blend of royalty, music, and mystery, and once the rumor started, it spread quickly. Some journalists claimed that the story began with small talk at charity galas and social gatherings. Both Palmer and Diana moved in high-profile circles, often attending events hosted by British society figures. It didn't take much for people to imagine a meeting between the two. From there, speculation took off. Soon, gossip columns hinted at private conversations, unexpected encounters, and friendships beyond the public eye. None of it was proven, but the mere mention of Princess Diana's name was enough to give any story power. As the tabloids began to dig deeper, the rumors became more detailed. Some reports claimed that Palmer and Diana had met at parties along the French Riviera, where the wealthy and famous often gathered. Others said they had been seen talking privately at charity events in London. The stories grew even more dramatic, suggesting secret phone calls, late-night letters, and hidden meetings away from the cameras. None of these claims were ever confirmed, and no photos or reliable sources ever supported them. Friends of Palmer later said that he found the entire situation frustrating but amusing. He understood that fame came with unwanted attention, and he preferred not to fuel gossip by reacting. Those close to Diana also dismissed the rumors, saying she admired many artists and was friendly towards several of them, not just Palmer. Still, the press liked the idea of Diana being drawn to someone so different from the royal world she lived in. Palmer was elegant, intelligent, and private, a man who could match her charm but lived far from palace protocol. The story became part of the endless cycle of tabloid fascination with Diana's private relationships. For the rest of his career, he stayed true to his nature, calm, private, and always focused on his music. But behind that composure, his personal life was slowly taking on more pressure, and the next chapter would reveal the hidden struggles that fame and habit had begun to create. Secrets in smoke. Robert Palmer's introduction to heavy drinking came early in his music career. Life on tour was full of long nights, changing cities, and endless waiting between performances. Drinking was part of that culture. It filled the quiet hours and took the edge off the stress of constant travel. Palmer was never known to be wild or reckless, but he enjoyed a drink to relax and unwind. At first, it was social, a way to celebrate with the band after shows or connect with promoters and journalists. Over time, it became routine. The more his fame grew, the more he leaned on alcohol to cope with the demands that came with it. Cigarettes, too, became a permanent part of his image and daily life. Palmer was known for his loyalty to a specific brand and was rarely seen without one in hand. Reports and interviews from the time noted that he smoked heavily, often more than 60 cigarettes a day. He didn't try to hide it. In fact, he sometimes joked that smoking helped his voice and steadied his nerves. In one interview, he said something along the lines of, "It calms the nerves and helps the voice." Whether he truly believed that or simply used it as an excuse, it was clear he saw cigarettes as part of his rhythm, both creatively and personally. What made Palmer's habits more dangerous was the balance he tried to maintain between indulgence and control. He was deeply disciplined when it came to his work. Every performance, every outfit, and every note he sang had to meet his high standards. That same sense of discipline made him believe he could manage his drinking and smoking too. But the truth was that the line between control and dependence had already blurred. The habits that once seemed harmless had begun to shape his life in ways he didn't want to admit. By the late 1980s, the effects of years of smoking and drinking were starting to show. Doctors warned him about high blood pressure, heart strain, and the risks of continuing at the same pace. His friends and colleagues noticed changes too. He would get short of breath more easily, and at times he seemed tired and irritable. But Palmer brushed off these concerns. To the public, he appeared calm and confident, and he wanted to keep it that way. He often dismissed talk about his health, insisting that he was fine and in control. He once remarked that he was disciplined, not reckless, which reflected how he viewed himself. He believed that his precision and professionalism extended to every part of his life. including his vices. To him, drinking and smoking were choices, not weaknesses. But those around him saw the cracks in that belief. During recording sessions, he would sometimes need breaks to smoke or rest. On tour, he appeared more tired than before, and the people who worked closely with him noticed how much effort it took for him to maintain the same level of energy on stage. Despite these warning signs, Palmer refused to slow down. He continued to release albums, give interviews, and perform around the world. In private, though, his lifestyle was beginning to take a toll. The pressure to live up to his image, the smooth, unshakable gentleman of rock, made it hard for him to admit that he was struggling. His denial wasn't dramatic. It was quiet and steady, just like everything else he did. He simply didn't want to accept that the habits that had once helped him manage stress were now damaging his health. His quiet collapse. Robert Palmer moved to Lugano in the 1990s, partly for privacy and partly for practical reasons. Switzerland offered financial benefits for international artists, but more importantly, it gave him the space he needed to live life on his own terms. The years of constant press attention and gossip had taken their toll, especially during the height of his fame in the 1980s. Lugano, with its quiet streets and lake views, allowed him to disappear from the spotlight. Those who saw him there described him as polite, reserved, and deeply focused on his work. He continued writing and recording music, always striving to refine his craft. Though he could have rested on his success, Palmer remained serious about his art. He wanted to keep evolving rather than repeat himself. In 2003, he released Drive, a blues-inspired album that showed a return to his musical roots. The record was a tribute to the American blues and soul music that had shaped him as a young man. It was raw, heartfelt, and stripped of the heavy production that defined some of his earlier hits. Critics praised it as one of his most honest works. Palmer seemed content in this quieter phase of life. He lived comfortably, traveled occasionally, and avoided unnecessary publicity. He enjoyed the company of close friends, good food, and long evenings filled with conversation. To outsiders, he appeared calm and in control, much like he always had. But privately, the years of heavy smoking and drinking had already left a mark on his health. On September 26, 2003, Robert Palmer was in Paris, staying at the Warwick Hotel near the Champs-Élysées. He was there on a short trip after finishing work on his album. The night before, he had dinner with friends and seemed to be in good spirits. He joked, talked about future projects, and appeared relaxed. The following morning, he had breakfast, read the newspapers, and returned to his room. Sometime later, he collapsed from a massive heart attack. He was just 54 years old. Emergency services arrived quickly, but it was too late. The autopsy confirmed that he had died of natural causes, brought on by a heart attack. His history of heavy smoking and drinking had likely made things worse. There was no sign of drugs or foul play, but the media immediately began to speculate. Some tabloids suggested an overdose or hidden illness, while others tried to connect his death to earlier rumors about his private life. For a man who had spent so much of his life guarding his privacy, even his death became the subject of wild headlines. Friends and colleagues were devastated. Many said that, although he had been warned about his health, his passing still came as a shock. He had seemed full of life just hours earlier, discussing future plans. His sudden death cut short a career that still had more to offer. News of Palmer's death spread quickly around the world. His family, especially his ex-wife Sue and their children, was heartbroken. Despite their separation, there had never been a public feud, and she had remained a quiet supporter of his work. Out of respect, the family chose not to make emotional statements or participate in interviews. They preferred to mourn privately, staying consistent with the quiet dignity that Robert himself had valued. Musicians and peers from across the industry paid tribute in their own ways. Some remembered his professionalism and kindness. Others spoke about his unique blend of style and substance. Many of those who had worked with him mentioned his perfectionism and how he demanded the best from himself, but always with grace. Want more deep dives into music legends and the untold stories behind their lives? Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a story.